What's up, everybody? You are back on the other side with Mike G, and today I'm bringing you the story of a man who starred in the world of K1 kickboxing and the UFC. He is known for having some of the most brutal leg kicks in all of combat sports history, and I've been told by several fighters that he is one of the greatest trainers ever. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Hardonk. How are you doing, Anthony?
I'm great, and thank you for the nice introduction.
It took me an hour and a half. Not really. Um, I like to start out where people start out, where you were born and growing up. Tell me what it was like growing up in the Netherlands as a kid.
Um, I grew up in a great family in a great country, great situation. I'm very blessed with my childhood. Um, yeah, it's a great country. Right now, I live in California,
Mhm.
and that is mainly because I like the sun. So if there's the one thing that's wrong with my country is that it's too dark and too rainy, and we don't have enough sun. But I found the sun in California, and I'm enjoying life here. So yeah, no
All
complaint.
right. When did you discover martial arts and combat sports?
Um, I grew up swimming. I was on the
Okay.
swim team, and I played water polo. Really enjoyed it. Um, Especially the water polo because it had a little bit of a fighting element to it, a physical, direct physicality with opponents, which what I liked. Um, but I was always interested in something a little bit more, an individual sport. And then what happened is that one day one of my teammates he came up to me and he said, "Hey, do you want to learn kickboxing?" And I was like, "What is kickboxing?" I had no idea. And he's like, "Yeah, it's kind of a combination of boxing and karate." And my dad is a pioneer of kickboxing. He's a referee right now. He doesn't have a gym, but he wants to train me, and I need a training partner. Do you want to be my training partner? And I thought, well, that sounds cool. I always liked Jean Claude Van Damme movies and Bruce Lee movies, and I was very physical, so I was on board, and we started training and I really enjoyed it. And his dad was a pioneer of the Dutch kickboxing. He himself had learned in Japan, was one of the people had introduced it into the Netherlands. He was an detective, police detective, and he was the one responsible for founding the first kickboxing federation in the Netherlands. So
Oh, wow.
basically, I get in touch with the Big John McCarthy of Dutch kickboxing, and yeah, so my friend's dad taught us kickboxing, and then a few years into it, I got more serious, and I was interested in competition, and that's when I joined the Vos Gym in Amsterdam, which is one of the most successful kickboxing gyms in of all times, and started training there alongside fighters like Ivan Hippolyte and Ernesto Hoest, and yeah, started competing, and then from there I got interested in other martial arts, and that's how I ended up doing mixed martial arts.
Okay. Um, I'd like to talk a little bit about your K1 debut in 2001 at the K1 World Grand Prix. For those who don't know what a K1 World Grand Prix is, can you kind of give us a rundown of that and your performance and the experience for you doing that?
Yeah, so the K1 Grand Prix is a tournament, and so it's an 8-man tournament, and you fight some of the best fighters, and in that time it was the region, it was a qualifying tournament, and uh, and it was the best fighters of Scandinavia. Um, Technically, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark are Scandinavia, but sometimes the Netherlands gets swooped in there, and I could compete there, and it was a great experience. I won my first fight quick and relatively easy. I think it was 30 seconds.
Wow.
Uh, then I went to the semifinals, and I faced a guy I already had fought twice, and the 3 times that we fought each other, we had crazy wars, and this fight was also a crazy war. I dropped him twice, and won the fight. But after that fight, I was beat up. I was limping, and yeah, I I was totally beat up. Go back into the locker room, and then trying to get ready for the finals. But at that point, I was already beat up. Um, then you have to kind of flip the switch. Like, okay, well, going out like this and fighting again is crazy. But okay, well then we'll have to be crazy. And I did that. Fought the finals, lost the finals, but it was a great experience. And yeah, I'm happy I did that.
That tournament format, fighting multiple times in one night, that's crazy.
Yes,
That's
it, it
crazy.
it's crazy, and I learned a lot from that. I
Hmm.
did a few more tournaments after that, and I realized in later tournaments I was a little bit better prepared,
Hmm.
because I knew what to expect. And
Right.
yeah,
Get in, get it over with quick,
yes,
repeat.
yes,
Absolutely. All right. Showtime 6, 2002, you took on an all-time great in Remy Bonjasky. He was actually one of the first K1 fighters I ever watched when I was first exposed to K1.
yes.
Talk a little bit about that experience facing him.
That was a good fight. Um, I- for me, I remember that I was at that time I was coming up, but I had
Hmm.
a hard time getting fights. I wasn't on contract with the K1 at that time. It was hard for me to get in the K1. The problem was that there were so many Dutch fighters dominating in the K1, and the K1 was Japanese-based promotion, but they tried to be an international promotion,
Hmm.
and so they weren't too happy about more up-and-comer Dutch fighters coming up.
Right.
Um, Remy Budjasky, he's my age, but he had already had his international breakthrough. He was already on the contract with UFC. He just came back from a fight with Ray Sefo
Hmm.
in Japan, and I had been sitting on the sidelines for a long time. And so for me, it was a challenging match, but it was also a big step up. It was a big opportunity, so I took it very serious. Um, I started out very, very well. I think the first round was very even, but then after that, and I think it had to do with my lack of experience. Um, he kind of kept that pace, that high pace and sharpness, where I think I started to slow down a little bit. It had nothing to do with my training or my conditioning. My conditioning was great. My training was great. So I think it had to do with the experience that high level fighting. He had more
Sure.
experience than I and yeah, he slowly started to get the overhand more and more. That was a 5 round fight, I believe, and I think in the last round, I think I got a knockdown against me, but I fought till the end, um, and then lost by a decision. Good fight, great experience against a good fighter.
Hmm.
Yeah, and later on, shortly after, he had his greatest successes. He I don't know if it was that year or the year after, but then he won the K1 Grand Prix.
Hmm.
Um, so he was the became the champion, the big champion, and did that 2 more times. So yeah, became a 3-time K1 champion. Yeah,
Hmm.
great fighter. So it was an honor
Absolutely.
to fight against him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I wanted to talk about the Badr Hari fight in rings. First, and I don't mean to say anything out of line against anyone, was this normal Badr that you were facing off against, or had he kind of already started the strange behavior?
Um, you know, he was, but we were both up and coming, and he was still young. So I think the people around him, he was at that time he came out of the Chakariki, one of the other big kickboxing gyms in Amsterdam. He was coached by Tom Haring, very experienced pioneer coach. I think he was a little bit more controlled maybe by his team and his coaching, and I think later on he started switching teams, and I think that's when he started, you know, yeah, he kind of went off the path, got into a lot of legal trouble, and I think that came after he switched to the Mike's gym. I don't think it's the fault of Mike or Mike's gym,
Right. Right.
but I think that's when the people around him had a harder time keeping him on the right track.
Alrighty. Um, you ended your kickboxing career with 4 straight TKO finishes. Why did you stop kickboxing?
My dream was always to compete in the K1. That was my big. Actually, my dream was to win the K1, become the K1 Grand Prix champion. But the K1, I made a few appearances, um, but they never gave me a contract. The reason for that was, which I realized later, was that what I said earlier. They had so many Dutch fighters.
Hmm.
Every year, every first week of December, they had the K1 World Grand Prix, which is the big final tournament. They have the best eight of the year. Maybe there's one or two wild cards. Usually they put a Japanese fighter in and sometimes an American fighter because they were hoping for a Japanese win or an US champion
Hmm.
because the Japan is the home market, and the United States would be an amazing grow market.
Hmm.
But the Dutch were pretty much always winning. We almost every year was won by a Dutch fighter. So every World Grand Prix, there were four, I believe, one year five Dutch fighters. Ernest de Hoest, Peter Aert, Sammy Schild, Alistair Overeem. And so they weren't waiting. Of course, Remy Bunjaski, we just mentioned. They weren't waiting for more Dutch fighters. And so
Right.
what was that my generation and the generation after, the fighters from the Netherlands that actually got to fight in the K1 were immigrants or um, sons of immigrants who had double nationality and could represent a different country. Like Badr Hari,
Sure.
born in the Netherlands, but he's definitely raised in the Netherlands. He learned kickboxing in the Netherlands. His Dutch is just like mine, but he represents Morocco because his
Hmm.
parents are Moroccan. Kohan Saki, another upcomer kickboxer at the time, later fought in the UFC. Um, he represented Turkey because his parents are from Turkey. He's Dutch. He's born and
Hmm.
raised in Rotterdam. And there were a few others. Tyrone Spong represents Suriname. And so I think after when that Dutch domination was going on, the K1 just was we're looking for people from other countries that made the event more international.
Hmm.
My parents are both Dutch, and so for me, yeah, uh, fighting for another country wasn't really a serious option. I remember having a conversation with my coach at that time where he's like, "Oh, you should move to the U.S. and become a U.S. citizen and represent the U.S." And that was a at that time I thought it was ridiculous, which is funny because now I live here and have my family. Uh, but yeah, I remember having that conversation because as a Dutch fighter, it was just very hard.
Sure.
So what happened was that sitting on the sideline, I did a few fights in smaller promotions. Um, Always waiting for the K1 to get a permanent contract. And then it was harder and harder to get kickboxing fights. But at that time, MMA started growing and also in Europe. And I was offered many MMA fights, but I wasn't really training for that.
Right.
Uh, I started taking on a few MMA fights before I really knew how to grapple. And I kind of liked it. And I was always interested in complete training. So at a certain point, I just yeah, flipped the switch and yeah,
When you
changed.
first started training, was it hard to? I'm assuming when you show up at a gym to train MMA and it's time to spar hands, how much do you have to, I guess, hold yourself back because of how accomplished you are versus, say, a guy who's 2 years into training? Is that something that's difficult to do?
Yeah, and in the beginning, didn't really happen. Like I would do sparring with kickboxing fighters, especially in Europe. I remember at one point started training Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Hickson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, in the Netherlands. There was a group of guys who trained under Hickson Gracie, and I remember going there as a professional kickboxer, and I got submitted by a 14-year-old kid. Um, which was very interesting and really showed that I had to learn how to grapple.
Hmm.
Uh, I had zero wrestling, and that's one of the reasons I moved to the U.S. But the training was always segmented. I, I I would do my jiu-jitsu in one place. Would do my wrestling somewhere else.
Okay.
Then I would do my kickboxing with kickboxers. Um, that changed until I met Vladimir Matachenko, and um, he was a great he was a great wrestler, obviously, coming from Belarus and um, being a successful wrestler who had made the transition to MMA.
Hmm.
But his striking wasn't that good, and so we were introduced to each other. He didn't have a solid team of training partners, so we started training together. I helped him with the striking, and then he helped me with my wrestling, and that was the first time that we could start kind of mixing up the sparring.
Hmm. All right. You and Vladdy are awesome together. I just gotta say, you guys are an awesome team.
Yeah.
Um, 2006, I believe it was. You got the call that the UFC was interested. How
Yeah.
did it feel to finally know you were going to the big show?
Um, that was great. It was surprising. It went much faster than I expected. This is before I met Vladimir. So at this point, I didn't really do any wrestling. Uh,
Okay.
I had started jiu-jitsu. I had just got my blue belt in jiu-jitsu, so I was a professional kickboxer that knew a little bit of fundamentals in
Hmm.
jiu-jitsu. Um, and I came to California to train more jiu-jitsu and to become a better grappler. But I had a problem, and it was with my visa. I had to. I could only stay for 3 months at a time, 3 months out of the year. And I'm like, that's not good enough. I gotta stay here longer. And at that time, um, the UFC was it had disappeared for a few years. In
Hmm.
Europe, even know it still existed. In Europe, we were really focused on the Japanese market, so it was
Hmm.
K1 kickboxing and then Pride
Yeah.
for. And so I learned that the UFC was still around. It was kind of growing and making a return, a strong return. And so I remember going to a UFC event in 2006. I believe it was in Las Vegas. It was Canada versus USA, I
Yep.
believe. And the headliner was George St. Pierre versus BJ Penn. And I remember going there and thinking like, wow, this is a great production. And this is so amazing fights.
Hmm.
And then kind of thinking for myself like, hey, maybe they're in need of an heavyweight, and maybe if I can fight for them, I can get a work visa and I can stay here and do more training and develop myself more.
Smart.
Yeah, um, I had a connection who had a connection who could actually give hand a DVD of some of my fights to Joe Silva, who
Hmm.
had a matchmaker, and so we did. We put together a DVD with some of my fights. Um, I had done some MMA fights already. I'd fought one UFC veteran, Wes Sims, before in Hawaii. I beat him, which looked good. So, yeah, got the DVD to Joe Silva, and the next day they called me the next day and offered me a contract. Uh,
Awesome.
it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a great opportunity for me, and it allowed me to, from that moment on, stay in the U.S. and do way more training here and learn jiu-jitsu. And then shortly after, I met Vladimir, and that's when I started to learn how to wrestle.
Okay. Um, see here, your UFC debut was way back at UFC 65, which I own. It's on the shelf in the living room.
Okay.
Um, against Sherman. Pendergast. Uh, I don't think anybody had ever seen leg kicks like that in the UFC. Man, tell us what happened in that fight.
Sherman Pendergast, he had done one or two fights in the
Mhm.
U4, I believe.
I think he had two fights before yours. Yeah.
Four. But I was originally going to fight somebody else. I'm blanking of the name. Um, I was going to fight somebody else, but then that fighter pulled out. So Sherman Pendergast stepped up, and he took his spot as a last minute replacement. I looked at his fights. I saw he was strong. Um, he wasn't a specialist in anything, but he was very powerful, very aggressive, had
Mhm.
heavy. Um, he seemed to do some ground and pound, but not really focus on takedowns. So um, I expected a stand up fight, and I expected a hard fight.
Mhm.
Knew he was going to be in my face, and that's what happened. Um, what I didn't really prepare for using my low kicks. I was focusing on using my clinch because like if he closes the distance, I can't just stay in front of him and trade short powerful punches with him because that's too risky. So if he comes in my range, I gotta go use my clinch and hit him with some knees. But yeah, in the process, the low kicks were there, and so I think he never expected low kicks at that point. Nobody was using low kicks in the UFC, and I wasn't thinking about it, but it just as a kickboxer, it was just something that at that moment it was there at that moment, and my instincts took over, and I hit him, and then I saw he was in pain, so. It's like okay, this is good. And actually, it slowed him down a little bit. So then it
Mhm.
allowed me to hit him more, and yeah, that worked well, and I could finish him.
I can still hear Joe Rogan during the broadcast saying how we've never seen leg kicks like this in the UFC.
Yeah, and I know that one of the early UFCs there was Marco Ruas from
Mhm.
Brazil, who had used leg kicks, but I don't think he had the power leg kicks
Mhm.
that I have. And he fought a dangerous opponent, big guy, and he hit him many times.
Mhm.
My kicks are very heavy, and so I didn't need that many, and I
Mhm.
think that's what made a big impact. People had not seen that you can finish people with three low kicks
Yeah.
instead of
You
and
mentioned Marco, even Pedro Hizo, who had amazing kicks, still wasn't. It still take him 10 or 12 to get to the point that you could with three.
yeah, great kicker by the way.
Mhm.
But yeah, I totally surprised my opponent and I think everybody watching at that time. Um, because yeah, if you connect them right, then two or three can be enough.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, of course, it also depends on your opponent. Like if you land them right, you can have a good kick, but you got to have the timing right, and But I think Sherman Pendergast, he was more of a boxer, and I think that allowed me to attack the legs freely.
Yeah. Alrighty. You experienced a couple losses before going on a three-fight win streak, all three by finish. What made 2008 such a productive year for you? Was it
Um,
just luck?
I don't think so. I think I started to feel I started
Comfortable?
like more yeah I'm comfortable with MMA. I started to feel like a complete fighter. Um, 2006 and 2007, I was such a beginner. I
Mhm.
was figuring it out. And 2008, I started to feel like an MMA fighter. My understanding of the game had grown a lot, and yeah, I think that showed in some of the fights.
Yeah, definitely did. Your last UFC fight came against Pat Barry at UFC 104. Did you know it would be your last? And why did you decide to hang up the gloves?
I wasn't aware, but maybe looking back in the back of my mind, I was already kind of thinking about the future. Um, but I didn't go into the fight thinking I was going to finish it right there. But there were some challenges outside of fighting. But my situation was that I was still officially living in the Netherlands, and I had my apartment and my car. But then I was spending so much time in California that I had an apartment and a car in California, and we weren't making that much money. The
Hmm.
sport wasn't mainstream yet, um, so I had crazy bills. And then what happened was that the Dutch IRS realized I was a professional fighter. They assumed I was making a lot of money. Probably compared me to tennis players or something. And so all of a sudden they sent me this huge bill. I had to pay a lot of money, which freaked me out. And of course, you can get it back, but first you got to pay it. So I had to take out a loan. I got to pay the Dutch IRS. Meanwhile, I'm also paying um, in the United States. I had done some fights in Canada and England, so you pay taxes there. Some of it
Hmm.
you get back, but it's taken out of your paycheck. So I was having a lot of financial problems. I was totally new to working in another country and dealing with governments like that. And so I was trying to keep it together while training for that fight. Um, and I think at the same time I always enjoyed teaching and coaching. So I was teaching and coaching on the side. So I was maybe looking back working towards the next phase in my life, but I wasn't aware of it at the time.
Gotcha. All right. Your gym that you have now, how did it come about, and what has the experience of training the next generation been like for you?
Yeah, so I found the gym in 2010. I decided to settle here in California because at that point I felt that with MMA becoming so big, but the level of striking not being there yet. Most people had a
Hmm.
boxing background. Some people were trying to mix boxing with karate or Muay Thai or Taekwondo,
Hmm.
but not everybody did it with great success. So I was like, hey, maybe I can add something here. Maybe I can be of value here and benefit from the sports becoming more and more mainstream. So that's why I decided to settle here. I opened my gym, enjoyed teaching and coaching, although I had to learn a lot. Um, when you come from playing professional sports and you start coaching, you think you know it all,
Right.
and you realize that it doesn't always translate, or maybe you don't know it as much as you think. And now I understand why, when I look at professional sports, that a lot of successful coaches are in their 50s, in their 60s,
Hmm.
because it takes time
Yeah.
to learn the coaching craft. Um, and maybe even learning the game on a deep level outside of just yourself, because somebody else who is built different, who has different motor skills, who has different
Hmm.
psychology, um, with different triggers, runs into different problems than you do. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of yeah human knowledge, life knowledge that you have to gain.
I'm
uh,
sure it's difficult. Each person has a different personality, so you almost do you have to, in a way, kind of individualize, not necessarily the physical training, but the way you speak to them, motivate them. I'm assuming that's different for each person as well.
100%, and the physicality too, of course, because a short fighter fights different than a tall fighter.
Hmm.
um, right, and then there's the personality traits. Some people you have to fire up, other people you have to slow down. uh,
Hmm.
some people are very explosive in their actions, but maybe a little bit impulsive also in this decision making. Um, so yeah, I had to learn a lot, but I I enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it, and I'm still learning. There's still a lot that I don't know. The more you learn, the less you know. Um, but it's great. I'm enjoying it.
What's scarier, going into the cage or the ring yourself, or sending a guy that's been training with you in for his first fight ever?
Maybe the second. Maybe
Okay.
um, because you feel responsible, and
Hmm.
especially when you work with young kids,
Right.
and they they come to your gym and they trust you, and you talk to the parents and the parents trust you, and you feel responsible. And then they go out, they make their first walkout, they step in the cage, step in the ring, and then yeah, it's very scary. You hope you gave them enough information and
Hmm.
much, um, and yeah, you hope they're ready, and especially the young kids. Like an adult, like that, adults, they I think they can make that decision for themselves a little bit better.
Right.
Um, but with children, you feel protective,
Yeah.
and but then you have to let it go because they're on their own. So, yeah, that is definitely scary.
All right. In your combined kickboxing and mixed martial arts career, who was your favorite fighter to watch fight?
I had a few,
Okay.
and then at that point, like mixed martial arts was so new, so a lot of the people that I looked up to and that I drew inspiration from, they weren't as complete as they are now, or sometimes they weren't even mixed martial art fighters. Like I trained with Master Hust, who I also really looked up to for his
Yeah.
accomplishment skills, and what he had done over the years, as a kickboxer, and being so dominant, and fighting often much larger people than himself. And Master Hust was, it's basically a middleweight who became a light heavyweight and who was fighting
Bob
huge
Sapp.
yeah, exactly, huge heavyweights, um, without a USADA. So,
Hmm.
so very impressive. Um, and then like another fighter that I looked up to and I had the opportunity to train with a little bit was Rickson Gracie,
Hmm.
who was one of the early MMA pioneers. Yeah, of course, a ground specialist, but definitely an MMA fighter. Um, yeah, those were definitely people I looked up to. And then, of course, Fedor came around,
Hmm.
and I think he was one of the first real complete fighters
Yeah.
and real dominant complete champions. Um, yeah, who I think is one of the greats of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially being a middleweight fighting at heavyweight.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's I've spoke with Spencer Fisher about Hickson Gracie before, and a lot of people really like Hickson. You and Spencer both are huge fans of his. I myself am a huge Gracie fan, all the way back to the beginning. My 6-year-old daughter's middle name is Gracie, uh,
Oh,
because of the Gracies. So if you see
yes,
Hickson, tell him I said thank you for everything.
yes, yes. He moved to Florida, so I won't see him anytime soon. But yes,
Okay.
he's a huge inspiration. And yeah.
Alrighty. These next questions are kind of goofy. I like to ask people not so much what's your favorite color or number type questions, but just questions, goofy, normal people questions to get to know you a little bit better. My first one is pizza or burgers?
Oh, definitely burger.
Burgers. All right.
Although I like cheese, I'm a big cheese guy. But yes, I love burgers.
What comes on your perfect burger? What comes on it? What's it layered?
Well, lots of cheese.
There we go.
And then Thousand Island.
Okay, some mac sauce.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Both in their prime, who wins, Tyson or Muhammad Ali?
Mike Tyson said Muhammad Ali, so I'm not gonna, yeah, fight him. Muhammad
Awesome.
uh, Tyson, incredible, of course,
Hmm.
but he was a good soldier. He was executing. somebody else's uh,
Hmm.
fight smarts. Where I feel like Muhammad Ali was a little bit more um, a general. He made his
Yeah.
own, and that's where I have to give him the overhand.
Hmm. I think he could have. I think Ali could have danced around long enough to really upset Mike. And once that the emotions come out, we all know what happens.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
All right. Coffee or energy drinks?
Oh, coffee. I love coffee
Okay. Are you like a 1 cup in the morning guy? You drink it all day long?
all day long. I drink it right before I go to sleep. I don't know. Maybe that's a European thing, but yeah, I love coffee, cappuccino, espresso all day long.
Just like Vladdy.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Another both in their prime question. One of the great fights we missed out on. Who wins, GSP or Anderson Silva?
Well, Anderson Silva was bigger,
Hmm.
and I think that GSP would have a hard time with
Getting
the
through the range.
with the range. So Anderson Silva,
Okay. Better movie, Kickboxer or Bloodsport?
uh, Bloodsport.
Awesome.
Yes,
Everyone I've asked that question is not one kickboxer yet.
yeah, Bloodsport. One of my favorites.
All right. Who would have a better chance of beating you in a kickboxing match? Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris?
Chuck Norris. He
All
was
right.
a legitimate champion. He I'm sure that Bruce Lee was capable. He was definitely a martial artist, not just an
Mhm.
actor. He was a martial artist. He was revolutionary. Some people from his time that worked with him, including Chuck Norris and Joe Louis, speak highly of him. So
Mhm.
he must have had skills, but Chuck Norris was a competitor. So I have to give that to Chuck Norris.
I used to own a T-shirt that had Chuck Norris's picture on it, and it said, "I don't think it's a coincidence that World War II ended on the same day Chuck Norris was born."
Oh, that's funny.
It
Is
same day.
that's funny?
Yeah. All right. Are you a dog person or a cat person?
I'm a dog person. Yeah, I love
What
dogs.
what kind of puppy you got?
I got a Labrador Pit Bull mix.
Awesome.
Yes, very sweet dog.
All right. Do you ever take it to the gym? Let it hang out?
No, not really. She's really shy, so I don't
Okay.
want to. Yeah,
All right. I want to know who your favorite band is.
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, amazing. It's in the CD player in my car right now.
Pink Floyd, I think is. I, I think the Beatles are overrated. Great, but overrated. I
Mhm.
think Pink Floyd is underrated. Great, acknowledged, but underrated. I think what they have done, and they were so different, and their music holds up over time. It's yeah.
Absolutely.
I actually just 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I took my son, who's now 11, just turned 11. I took him to David Gilmour, who came
Hmm.
to LA. David Gilmour did his last tour, the guitar player of Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Wow, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. In your career, pick a fighter that would have been a dream fight for you. Someone you never had an opportunity to fight. It could be anyone, any promotion, any combat sport. What would be a dream fight?
Ooh. Uh, I, I think that would have been kickboxing. I my initial dream was winning the K1,
Mhm.
and I grew up kickboxing, and I trained with Ernesto, who's one of the greats, but then his nemesis, and he was still around when I was competing, was Peter Aerts.
Mhm.
So yeah, it would have been a great honor to have be able to fight him. We actually trained together one time in a wrestling gym in Amsterdam. I was spending a few weeks in Amsterdam, and then um, I visited the cops gym in Amsterdam and joined a wrestling session. And then he showed up, and he didn't want to. He's from the south of the Netherlands, but he didn't want to get stuck in traffic, so he decided to do a random wrestling session. He didn't know how to wrestle. We ended up wrestling each other for an hour and had a lot of fun. He's a really funny guy. We knew each other.
Mhm.
But yeah, never had a chance to fight him in kickboxing. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, I would have watched that for sure. Um, as you know, the reason I do these interviews is to try to reach people who might be struggling in life, whether it's little things, big things. Maybe people don't know how to ask for help or where to go. If
Yeah.
someone watching this is struggling with the crap that we all have to put up with in life, what is a message you would share with them about not giving up?
Um, yeah, I think that everybody has moments where things get hard, and we don't always see the end. We don't see the solution. Um, but these moments come and go, and I think we have to always just keep going. And yeah, the good moments, they come and go, and the bad moments come and go too. um so yeah, I think just keep going. And maybe that's also the fighter in me. As a fighter, you have to just keep going. Sometimes it looks really bad, you got to keep going. But I think that's the same in life. That's maybe why I liked fighting, because it's such a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
But keep going. Good moments come and go, and bad moments come and go. And in the Netherlands, we say, na regen komt zonneschijn. After the rain, there will be sun. Um, so, yeah, keep going.
All right. Um, when you aren't training the next generation of fighters and sharing your time with little guys on YouTube like me, what do you do for fun?
I mostly spend my time at home with the family.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very blessed with an amazing family, lovely wife, and we have two amazing kids. My son just turned 11, and then we have a 2-year-old little girl who runs the household. And yeah, time
You're,
at home with them. Yeah.
you're kind of like me. You got close to being done and started over again.
Yes, yes, which is great and
Yeah,
challenging at the same time.
I understand. I'm 45 and I have a 14-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Oh, amazing.
I'll get my house back when I'm almost 60.
Yeah, yes.
All right. What is the best way for fans and friends of yours to keep up with you and what you have going on these days?
Um, I'm on Instagram. I haven't been very active, but I was just thinking to myself to be a little bit more active on there. And then, of course, I have my gym, Dynamics MMA, and in LA, Santa Monica, California. And the people in my gym are very good at posting things, and
Okay.
buddy who would like to train with us. And I'm my now longtime friend Vladimir Matachenko. He's still there as the wrestling coach. I focus on the kickboxing. We have some great jiu-jitsu coaches, and then me and Vladimir, we coach the MMA program and fighters together. Um, so yeah, we have our gym, Dynamics MMA. If people want to come by and say hello or join a training session, everybody's welcome. And yeah, follow our activities on there.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions for you. From an Anthony to an Antony, thank
Yeah,
you for sharing your time. I really, really appreciate it. It's been awesome. I've enjoyed researching you. I've enjoyed talking with other people about you. I'll upload this to YouTube as soon as it is there. I'll send you a copy if you want to check it out. For any reason you don't like the interview, let me know. I'll pull it right down.
awesome. I liked it so far. So yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. All right. I appreciate it. I tell everyone at this point, I feel like I'm your friend. I hope you feel the same, and I'll probably say hi in the future.
Absolutely, we're friends for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day, sir.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. Bye bye.